Democracy depends on the willingness of the losing party to accept defeat and continue participating. However, when should the losing party accept electoral defeat, and when should they claim foul play? That is the question that Georgia's opposition parties have decided they need to answer after the October 31st, 2020 parliamentary elections. This video is divided in 3 segments. The first describes the historic background of the elections. The second describes the elections themselves. And the third section assesses the implication of the elections for Georgia's future. Until this point, Georgia's parliament was composed of a 150-member unicameral chamber. Half of its parliamentarians, or 77 members, were elected proportionally, while the remaining 73 members were elected on a first-past-the-post, single-member district system. It is this latter group which gave rise to problems. This is because single-member districts only require a candidate to get more than 50% of the vote in their district to win, meaning that this is a winner-take-all system. In a manner no different than the problems associated with the United States Senate. This group of parliamentarians allowed overrepresentation of the winning party thanks to the winner-take-all nature of single-mandate districts. For example, in the 2016 parliamentary elections, the ruling Georgian Dream coalition won only around 50% of the vote, so they took 44 of the first 77 seats of parliament. However, they won 71 out of 73 of the single-member districts, giving them a total of 115 out of 150, or 76%, of parliament, even though they only received around 50% of the total vote. Under the system which will begin after the October 31st, 2020 elections, the Georgian parliament is composed of a mostly proportional system, with 120 seats being proportional and 30 seats based on a single-member district. What's more, the threshold to enter parliament has been lowered to 1% of the nationwide vote. The election campaigns in Georgia took a typical form for Georgian politics, full of intense rhetoric, harsh accusations and insults, and a polarized yet still diverse media environment. There were 2 primary incidents which defined the pre-election environment. The first was a violent incident between Georgian Dream and United National Movement activists in the town of Martineuli, and the second was the arrest of 2 cartographers who were accused of using pro-Azerbaijan maps and attempting to resolve the ongoing border delineation between Azerbaijan and Georgia. Both incidents brought intense accusations between the 2 main political parties in Georgia. Georgia's media sources, specifically its television stations, did little to ease the political tension in the run-up to the elections. What's interesting is the case of campaign financing and advertisements. It comes with no surprise that the ruling Georgian Dream Party both raised the most funding and spent the most on advertisements, receiving over 10 million Georgian lari in donations and spending over 8 million lari on advertising. What's particularly interesting is that a new party, Lelo, which is competing in its first election ever, outraised the United National Movement by over 300,000 lari, and spent the 3rd most on advertisements. Other political newcomers, specifically Strategy Ahmad Shanabeli, also saw strong campaign financing. The 2020 parliamentary election saw an increase in violations compared to the 2016 election. The majority of the violations were procedural in nature, such as voters not turning in their ballots covered, polling booths being located too closely to poll workers and security cameras, improper mobilization of party activists, COVID health violations, such as poll workers wearing face masks improperly, and, most worryingly, a discrepancy between the ballot count and the number of signatures on the voters list in 61 out of Georgia's 3,847 precincts, including one incident of an individual voting more than once. One notable incident occurred at the number 79 polling station in Tbilisi's Goldani district, where 5 individuals were arrested for assault. Other notable incidents include a confrontation with election observers at a polling station in Rustavi, and when a penitentiary facility refused to allow Georgian public defender Nino Lumjaria from observing the elections in the prison. The biggest problem, however, came when the Central Election Commission published their preliminary results 7.5 hours after voting ended, giving many opposition party leaders a reason to suspect that the final vote count was being manipulated. 56% of eligible voters cast their ballots in the 2020 elections, which is an increase from the 2016 elections. The Georgian Dream claims 48% of the vote, with the United National Movement coming in second place with 27%. 8 other opposition parties, including newcomers Lelo and Strategy Ahma Shinabeli, gained between 1 and 3% of the vote. Upon announcing the results of the elections, the opposition parties decided to boycott the results, claiming that the elections were unfair and that the votes were falsified due to the discrepancy between the parallel vote tabulation and the official election results. Georgia's opposition parties are now claiming for the results to be nullified and a new election held. The main dilemma here is that, despite the election undoubtedly being worse than the 2016 elections, all international observers, such as Transparency International, the National Democratic Institute, the American Embassy, the OSCE, and the European Union all claim that despite these elections being a setback, they were still conducted in a free and fair manner, with the results being valid. Georgia's own domestic observers, however, were far more critical of the elections. There are no true winners in this election. The Georgian Dream's domestic and international reputation as being democratic reformers is probably over, while the opposition's decision to reject the election results and boycott parliament, despite the opinions of the international experts which they claim to be closely allied with, namely American and European Union observers, seems to put them at odds with the very institutions which they aspire to join. In the face of political hardship, Georgia's opposition continues to use non-participation and inaction as its primary political tool, which perpetuates the ability of the Georgian Dream to continue acting unopposed in parliament. Despite hope that this election would bring change to Georgian politics, the unwillingness of opposition parties to prove themselves truly formidable and effective political forces means that the problems which have plagued Georgia's politics will most likely continue. It is important to note that the road to democracy is not linear. There is no one-way ticket to becoming a stable democratic country. Instead, democracy depends on all parties, political, media, private organizations, and individual citizens alike, to participate in the country's civic project. Georgia's democratic future does not necessarily lie with the party which is governing the country, but rather how the opposition chooses to conduct itself. For more information on Georgia, visit our website www.visiting-georgia.com. Thanks for watching.